Hello and welcome to Burning Issues, the only program that provides you a glimpse inside the Wichita Fire Department. I'm Fire Marshal Brad Crisp, and in this episode we'll talk about Kansas air quality regulations in Wichita and Sedgwick County with an emphasis on the annual April burn restrictions. The Wichita Fire Department began working with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Bureau of Air, and the local Office of Environmental Health just over 6 years ago on implementing burn restrictions in the city of Wichita during the month of April. Stakeholders from across the state work together and continue to work together to explore ways to reduce the impact of smoke, especially during the springtime, on air quality for the Wichita area. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Bureau of Air, has delegated authority for implementation of the Kansas air quality regulations in Sedgwick County to the City of Wichita Office of Environmental Health. Working together, the Office of Environmental Health and the Wichita Fire Department hope to keep Wichita's air quality high and danger from outdoor burning low. The Wichita Fire Department has a long history of inspecting burn permit sites and assessing their safety as it pertains to that of the surrounding community. In recent years, our partnership with the Office of Environmental Health has strengthened. Joining me today is Baylee Cunningham, air quality specialist with Environmental Health, and Baylee's a subject matter expert on air quality and ozone. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Brad.
You bet. We get a ton of questions this time of year about air quality and the burn restrictions that are taking place and all those kinds of things. And I can't always effectively explain those things, so I really appreciate you being here. So as you know, in the month of April, the fire department declares burn restrictions. And those burn restrictions apply to pretty much everything that's discretionary. The only exception are like barbecue grills. You know, people can use their propane grills, their charcoal briquettes, their smokers and things like that, but they're not allowed to use their chimeneas, they're not allowed to use their fire pits, they're not allowed to use their outdoor fireplaces, or pile stuff up on the ground and burn it this time of year. And that is in large part due to these air quality issues that we have during this ozone season in the month of April. So I got a lot of questions for you, and I hope you can provide some clarity to the folks that are watching our program.
I'll do my best.
I know you will. So let's start off with kind of the burning issue of the day, ozone. What exactly is ozone?
Well, ozone occurs in two places in the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
It occurs in the upper part of the atmosphere, or the stratosphere,
okay,
and also on a low level near us,
mm-hmm,
in the troposphere. So we've got good ozone and bad ozone.
What? How can we have good ozone and bad ozone? What's the difference between the good and the bad?
Sure. The ozone that's happening up high, mm-hmm, in the stratosphere, that layer of ozone, it protects us from UV rays.
Okay. So we don't get like a really bad sunburn.
That's right.
Okay.
And the ground level ozone, or what we consider bad ozone, it takes place at a low level, right down here near us.
Okay.
And it's often referred to as urban smog.
So what exactly causes the bad ozone? Is it that smog stuff?
Ozone is created in the air. It's
mm-hmm,
not an emission that occurs, but it's ozone forming emissions that create ozone. So nitrogen oxides,
okay,
and VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, they are emitted into the air, and the sunlight sort of bakes those together,
okay,
and that creates ozone.
Okay, so there are certain things that we do over the course of the day in our regular lives that set up these volatiles and these organic things that cause the bad stuff to happen. What are some of those things?
Well, a really great example is the burning that
okay,
we see this time of year.
mm-hmm,
So that vegetation burns off,
sure,
and it releases VOCs.
Okay.
That's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty common for that to occur this time of year, and it's great for our farmers to do that.
Sure.
But those VOCs that are emitted into the air, when they mix with NOx, nitrogen oxides that are already in the air, in the presence of sunlight, that can create high levels of ozone.
Okay, so you brought up a couple of good points. The farmers and ranchers need to burn this time of year, and they're doing something that's good for the environment, it's good for their industry, it's good for their land, and it's good for all those things. But it can create issues for us because, as we've seen over the last several weeks, the wind kicks up and it blows that smoke and those gases our way. And
yes,
that's where the baking and those things start happening with the ozone. And we monitor that, right? You guys monitor that daily?
We do. So every day there's a team of air quality specialists in the environmental health building that monitor air quality levels and make sure that we not only stay in compliance, but that the air is clean and healthy for all of our community members.
Right. And then you guys take those measurements and you're probably having to report those to somebody, right?
Yes.
Who do we report those to?
We report those, KDHE is one of our partners, and they report those levels to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency.
Okay.
So the Environmental Protection Agency is required by the Clean Air Act to set national ambient air quality standards for the nation. So there is a national ambient air quality standard of 70 parts per billion that is nationwide.
Okay. Here, and that applies to us as well, here in
It does.
Wichita, America.
That's
in
right.
Sedgwick County, America.
That's right. So we are required to maintain compliance with that 70 parts per billion. So that ozone level each day during ozone season, which runs April 1st to October 31st, needs to stay below 70 parts per billion.
And there's a number of factors, it seems like to me, that are really kind of out of our control. Like if there's range fires going on in the Flint Hills and the wind happens to be blowing out of the northeast that day and we get blanketed with all that smoke, is there really a whole lot we can do about that?
No, there's really not. If the wind, like you mentioned, combined with range burning happens, then that smoke is going to roll in, those VOCs are going to roll in.
Right.
What we can do as a community is limit our VOCs, limit our NOx emissions, because ozone requires three things to be present in order for it to be created, and that's VOCs, NOx, and sunlight. So NOx comes from exhausts, any motorized equipment, and if we can limit some of the NOx that we're emitting, then the impacts of the VOCs that we see sort of rolling into town with the effects of those fires can limit the amount of ozone that's created.
So we can't pull a shade and put the sun out. We
right.
can't make the wind blow another direction, but we can control some of the things that we do in the form of emissions.
That's right.
Let's talk about a few of those things, and I know we've talked about them on other programs, but I think it's always a good idea to remind everybody what we can all do as a community to help keep those gases down.
Yeah, sure. So some things that we can all be doing to help lower our emissions is fuel up early in the morning or late in the evening. We can also limit the amount of time we idle on a day-to-day basis.
Our vehicles, lawnmowers, things, anything that has a combustion engine, basically.
That's right.
Okay.
Anything with a combustion engine is going to emit those NOx. And so anything that we can do to limit the amount of idling or combustion is going to be a great thing.
Or even driving.
Or
if we can limit our trips.
That's right. Or do some trip chaining. So if you have some errands to run, you want to go see a friend and you need to go to the grocery store, try to loop and do all of it in the same trip before coming back home. If you work in the industry and you often have to go off-site for meetings, consider having a teleconference. There's great technology out there that can limit our driving in that regard. Carpooling to work is a fantastic idea. If you live close to your friends or family, consider biking or walking to their house. Consider Wichita Transit. We've got new routes. We've got a great new app. We've got a trip planner. I mean, using Wichita Transit is easier than ever, and I encourage everyone to try to use public transit or alternate means of transportation a few times a week.
Right. So just so you all know that you're not the only ones being asked to do these things, the fire department also does a number of things, especially during this season, to help limit our emissions. We don't do training fires during the month of April, so we're not out there lighting fires and training in kind of a traditional firefighting way. We're limiting our travel, especially on those high ozone days. Any unnecessary trips, that ain't happening. Any unnecessary duties, that ain't happening. And when I say unnecessary, I'm talking about the building inspections can wait until the next day. The trip to the training grounds can wait until the next day. So we try to limit the amount of trips that we're making, and then also we're trying to follow also the idling policy. Unless the fire truck is at an emergency where it has to be running, we're turning them off so that we can eliminate or at least reduce some of the emissions that we're putting out as well. And it's really a team effort, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's really important to sort of incorporate these everyday actions throughout ozone season, but especially on ozone alert days.
Yeah.
So our air quality team, every morning, we sort of forecast like the weatherman. We look at wind direction, we look at where the fires are, we look at the temperature for the day and what our ozone levels were the previous days. And we try to predict whether or not we're going to have high ozone levels tomorrow, so that we can give the community notice, we can give business leaders notice, so that we can all make those everyday, plan those everyday actions, make those changes.
It's about everybody doing their part.
That's right.
Let's kind of switch gears just a little bit and talk about what some of those health effects could be. There's people in this community that have ailments, COPD, asthma, those kinds of things. And we hear questions from them about, well, we see all this smoke in the air and I'm not feeling exactly right. Explain some of that. What's going on?
Sure. So first, I just want to mention that if you're having some of those effects, you should call your physician.
Sure, absolutely.
But what we see is that ozone can affect sensitive groups more frequently than the general public. So if you're in one of those sensitive groups and you have a respiratory disorder like you mentioned, you might be more apt to feel some tightness in your chest, have some throat irritation, difficulty breathing. That's correct.
And they can always contact their physician. If it's an emergency, of course, they can call 911.
That's right.
Probably start with their physician and paying attention to the news, because if we know when those high ozone alert days are going to happen, you could try to stay indoors, try not to run the air conditioner on fresh air, run it on recirculate, and minimize the amount of smoke that gets in your home or in your car, those kinds of things, right?
That's right.
Okay, cool. There's different ways to find out about ozone levels in our community, and there's different ways to find out about those ozone alert days. What's some of the technology or the websites that are out there that people that are interested in this or want to learn more about it can go out there and take a look?
Sure, yeah. If you're in a sensitive group and you're concerned about the air quality, you can always go to airnow.gov.
Okay.
Anyone can go to airnow.gov.
Right.
It is a really intuitive website. You type in your zip code and it'll give you the air quality index for our area. And so you can get a general idea of what the air quality is like. Other websites that you can check out are www.wichita.gov /ozone.
Sure.
You can sign up for ozone alerts at that site. There's also some really great information about how ozone is informed, why it's important, a list of those everyday actions that everyone can do.
Right.
You can also follow Be Air Aware Kansas on Instagram and Twitter. Every day we release an air quality forecast.
Awesome.
And so that you can go check and see, is today going to be green, or otherwise is air quality going to be good? Is it going to be yellow or moderate?
Right.
Orange, if there's an orange picture on our Instagram page, then it's probably an ozone alert day, and everybody should take precautions or make those changes.
Sure. So let's recap just real quick before we wrap up here. What are those things that we can all do? Simple things that we can all do to help reduce those emissions? Reduce
idling.
Okay.
That's the number one thing. That is the best way that all of our community members can make a big impact on ozone forming emissions.
Right.
Also, fuel up early in the morning before 10 a.m. or in the evening after 6 p.m.
Because we're wanting to wait for the sun to go down and the heat of the day to dissipate.
That's right.
Okay. Same thing with mowing. Also, for example, mow early in the morning or mow late in the evening.
Any combustion tools, like you mentioned earlier, use those early in the morning or late in the evening. If you have painting or you plan on using solvents or chemicals, again, do those things early in the morning or late in the evening.
Sure.
You can also do trip chaining, trip reduction, public transit, walking, biking.
Right.
All of those things are going to make a big difference.
Awesome. So, and then of course, part of the reason why we're here today talking about this is because there are April burn restrictions. So you can't burn your chimney, your outdoor fireplace. Those things all emit those things into the air that could potentially be harmful. So during the month of April, we're in the burn ban, we're in those burn restrictions, and you need to really refrain from doing that. You can still use your barbecue grills.
That's right.
You can still cook your chicken and your steaks or your hamburgers and your hot dogs. But do that hopefully in the evening. Right, and because there are emissions that come from those types of devices as well. So, okay, great. As far as any additional information, you talked about Wichita.gov and you talked about going to the Environmental Services website. There's more information there, right?
The website's wichita.gov/ozone,
Okay.
and that's primarily where you're going to find all of that information.
All right. Thank you very much, Baylee, for joining me.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks for answering the hard questions.
Sure.
If you'd like to become more involved in the city of Wichita, or if you want to learn more about the Wichita Fire Department, you can go to wichita.gov and click on the Fire Department link, or you can call the Fire Department offices at 268-4441. That concludes this episode of Burning Issues. Our mission is to provide our community excellent, proactive fire and life safety services through prevention, education, and protection. Remember, Wichita firefighters are highly trained professionals that are your friends and neighbors. They're Wichita's bravest, and they're somewhere serving you in many ways every day.